Okay, I'm really excited for week number 7 because this is where the rubber meets the road. In all of the work I have done in healing my own trauma and helping other people heal their trauma, it's the 6 steps to healing a trigger that's made the biggest difference. So I'm really excited to have you at this point and learning the things in this week's lesson. So this week is going to be broken up into several pieces. The last lesson this week is going to be the 6 steps that heal a trigger. But I want to go down through and break up each one of the parts so that you actually know all of the pieces before we start working through the steps. The truth is, PTSD triggers, if we look at what they are, it's not 6 steps to healing a trigger. It's really 6 steps to healing your response to a trigger. So if you think about PTSD triggers, they happen in everyday situations because they come from our memories of the everyday situations that we were in when we experienced our original traumas. So something in that everyday situation causes a re-experiencing of the strong feelings, of the memories, and of the body sensations that happened originally when the trauma first occurred. So we really need to define this. It's not what's happening in your body. That re-experiencing the strong feelings, memory, and body sensations are not the triggers. Those are your responses to the trigger. So we need to separate that. So the triggers are the events. So something happened to you, somebody did something to you who was wearing a red shirt, and there ever after that red shirt comes to signal danger to you. The red shirt is the trigger. We want to heal your response to it, but the red shirt is what the trigger is. For me, when I was a child, I was attacked by a dog. So all dogs became dangerous in my brain. Now, my response to the dog is not the trigger. The trigger is the dog. The trigger is the thing that has been lodged in my brain as dangerous or potentially dangerous. There's a shelf of perfumes here because we can be triggered that there's danger by anything that's in any of our senses. So we see a red shirt, we see an animal, we smell perfume. If you've been in a car accident, you feel the sensation of being in a car and a swerving movement or sudden hitting on the brakes. Those are events that become triggers. So remember, there's the trigger and then there's your response. So a trauma trigger is whatever is happening outside of you that causes the fear. I also want you to remember from lesson 1 that in your brain there's no language and no time in the place where those triggers are stored. So remember, your brain stores like a filing cabinet everything that's ever happened to you, and you have a filing cabinet that basically says these are the things that equate to danger. And they don't care if it happened years ago. I was attacked by a dog when I was 5, and a dog of that size can't hurt me now the way it could when I was tiny. But my brain doesn't care that it's a different time. My brain only knows dogs are dangerous. Okay, so what we want to remember is that we're going to insert language and time into this part of our brain so that it can start to categorize things that have been triggers and make them neutral again. So I want you to start with just one trigger at a time. This can be overwhelming, and I remember when I was in my 20s and realized how triggered I was on a consistent basis. I had so much noise inside of me that I had to work really hard to prevent myself from being overwhelmed constantly. However, if you focus on one trigger at a time, then what you can do is you can heal your response to that trigger. And then once you've healed your response to that trigger, you now suddenly have an experience of being successful against something that you've been afraid of. And that will give you confidence to move to the next trigger and the next trigger and the next trigger. And the beautiful thing is that once you learn how to do this and you start healing one trigger at a time until you come to the place where you're not having those big responses anymore, your body learns how to separate yourself from that danger. So the process becomes more automatic, just like anything you learn when it comes to healing triggered responses that come with PTSD. So how do you choose which trigger you want to focus on first? I want you to look at the things that scare you, the things that trigger you. Look and find something that occurs pretty frequently so that it's easy for you to identify it every time it comes up. And make sure that that thing is something that you have a pretty consistent triggered response to. And you can tell what the trigger is and you can tell what your response is fairly easily. Once you have that, then we need to go on to the next step and look at an out of proportion response. So that's the next lesson. Let's get right to it. I'll see you there.